Hey guys, it's Danny. Today, as promised, I'm gonna tell you all about why I gave up LECA and Semi Hydro and all of that setup that I used to use like 4 years ago on my channel. I know I still get comments on those videos or on my newer videos asking why I gave it up, and I really don't think I addressed it properly. I mean, I did talk about it in other videos and in updates and all of that, but I don't think I have a proper video about it. So hopefully, if you're gonna like search on YouTube for MissOrchidGirl, LECA, and so on, you're gonna find this video as well, and hopefully it's gonna answer your questions. Right, so before we start, don't forget to give this video a like if you end up enjoying it and maybe you learned something new, and why not subscribe? I post multiple times a week and it's completely free, but if you're feeling extra and you can, do consider further supporting the channel by becoming a member, checking out the affiliate links down below, checking out the merch, or using the super thanks option below my videos. Right, so I know I don't have an orchid here, but currently it's the only plant that I have in LECA, and we're talking about LECA, so, you know, she sits here. She's my co-host today. This is the Monstera Thai constellation. I do have a video on repotting her. If you missed it, check it down below. That's a little bit besides the point, but anyway. So, first and foremost, I want to start with a disclaimer, and I want to make this abundantly clear from the beginning that I personally do not believe there is a, let's say, the best setup for orchids, the best medium for orchids, any of that. It's just what has more synergy with you. And by this I mean what works out good in your environment and with your lifestyle, pretty much. That's the short version of things. So as some of you might know, I tried out a lot of setups, and I gave up a lot of setups until I settled on one that works best with me. It doesn't mean any of those setups were bad. It just means they did not work out with me for one reason or another. Typically it has to do with environment, maybe sometimes even with the brands that I have locally available, I don't know, but they just didn't work out. But you will see other people using the same setups and the same maybe brands, and for them it does work out. But we don't all have the same houses, the same conditions, the same air, temperature, humidity, and so on. So all of these things make it so that certain setups are good for some people and not good at all for other people. So like, that's the disclaimer. I'm gonna talk about how horrible LECA was for me today, how much I didn't like it, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it didn't work out quite at all, and it frustrated me in the end, and I had to move on to something that does work out. I think I should have a co-host that is in moss as well, right? An orchid co-host. There, my pride and joy. She's not in bloom, but she has buds. Right, so let's start with the beginning, the setups that I had. Well, I started off with Semi Hydro, which was at the time very popular. I didn't come up with it. I think the first person who coined the term and who used it with orchids in that particular way was Ray from First Race Orchids. I honestly, since I don't live in the USA, I don't know if it's a shop or a hybridizer or a grower, I don't know. But I do remember they were the first to come up with this setup. Now, the setup itself derives from hydroponics. But what we're doing with orchids, and especially for windowsill growers and for home growers to make it easy, is that we do the so-called semi-hydroponic. We have this pot without drainage, without anything, and we create some holes above the bottom, the very bottom of the pot, so that we create a little reservoir of water here. And theoretically, that water gets wicked by the LECA, which is a porous material, gets wicked all the way up and hydrates the orchid. On paper, it sounds wonderful, and for some people it works wonderful. It just did not work out that wonderful for me. So I tried multiple variations on this setup because it just didn't work out all that great. And I also did like self-watering with LECA, all sorts of other variations I really don't remember. I have a lot of videos from 4 years ago that you can just type in the search bar, MissOrchidGirl Semi Hydro or LECA, and you're gonna find everything. So I did try a few things. I came up with some like DIY setups as well. But in the end, after testing that setup for a couple of years or so, I just noticed that my orchids were simply not growing to their best or their full potential, as I like to call it. And it's hard to explain how I noticed this. It's more of an experience thing. When you know your orchids, you know when they struggle, you know when, yes, they do grow nice, but they don't grow extremely nice, you know? And the best way that I can explain it is by showing you. This is my Cattleya orchid. I have her for 6 years. This is the tallest growth it ever created. I know that we don't have a lot of growth in the back, but you're just gonna have to trust me on this one. All of the growths were kind of at this level. This is its newest growth. I potted it in Sphagnum Moss last year. May 2022, so there you go. Exactly a year ago, I potted it here, and this is the result. Now, orchids will reach full capacity or full growth if they have good conditions. If they don't, they will still look nice. They might still bloom nice, 2-3 flowers. They will definitely look green, but if they don't have enough resources, they will just not look spectacular. They will look just nice. And sometimes it's hard to know that an orchid has a certain potential when for 5 years straight, you only see this, and suddenly it grows this. There's only one explanation for this. This didn't allow it to grow like this, but the Sphagnum Moss did. So the reason why I gave up LECA in those setups was because it did not create this for me. And in 2 years, I was able to tell. Now, why didn't it do that? Well, we have an answer for that as well. There's a multitude of things going on. Whenever we're dealing with a problem, not only with orchids, I think generally, but let's stick to orchids, sometimes it's not one cause that's determining that. It is just a multitude of things that work together to create a major cause. So with the LECA, I had what I believe to be a multitude of problems. First of all, at some point we discovered that this particular LECA at least is alkaline, which means it slowly and surely, well, not that slow, but it surely raises the pH of the water in that reservoir pretty much no matter what. It raises it to values of around 8. And yes, I tried preparing my LECA, soaking it. I also at some point was using a pH down solution. Lots of hassles. There were workarounds. At some point I think I even used some peat granules. There were workarounds, the situation, but it was hassling, you know? And also I couldn't really tell how good my little patches were working. All I knew was that the water in this reservoir, very soon after using a slightly acidic water, it would become alkaline, pH 8. And no matter what I did, I could not control it. Now, this is problematic because in very high pH, not all nutrients are absorbed efficiently by plants, orchids included. So even though I didn't necessarily see certain deficiencies to tell you, oh, it's magnesium, oh, it's nitrogen, oh, it's this or the other, as I said in a previous video, deficiencies with orchids, for me at least, they show as not stunted growth, but as not full potential. Let's call it like that. My orchids don't grow as big as they should. They don't make as many blooms as they can. So I noticed a lot of that going on. One of the problems, I believe, was the pH and my inability to lower that pH long-term sustainably, and that translated into a, let's say, inefficient pickup of nutrients. What did you see? That's the danger sound. Oh, she saw another bird. Another issue was that as my orchids were growing and as the pot was getting full of roots, the moisture overall that the LECA itself was providing was insufficient. Yes, I had my water here in the reservoir, but the layers above, they weren't all that moist because, as it just so happens, LECA, while it is absorbent, it's not all that absorbent. I mean, you compare it to Ceramis, there is no comparison. You compare it to Sphagnum Moss, there is no comparison. So the layers of LECA were drying out quite abruptly, and it was more obvious in the summertime when I had a lot of evaporation on the top of the medium, and I had that water in the reservoir, but like starting from half here, half of the pot, or the mid line of the pot, everything was dry. And it wasn't optimal. Like, some orchids really didn't enjoy that. You could see the roots were really dry at the surface even though there was water in the reservoir. So that's why at some point I gave up this setup and started to do like a sort of self-watering setup where I could get to control that reservoir a little better, because in this reservoir, since you do have LECA in it as well, it's not like a different chamber, the water you can store in here, it's not all that much. It's whatever spaces the LECA manages to keep in between the beads, which there is a mathematical formula for that. I'll link it down below if you're interested somehow. So you don't have like full space here. It's just whatever spaces you have in between the LECA beads, and it's not a lot. And especially in summer, and especially with big orchids, it's not enough. So I was having dehydration issues, like with a reservoir. Not fun. So that's why I migrated then to, let's say, a self-watering type of a setup, which allowed me to have more water in that reservoir, or space for more water. And that solved the issue temporarily until the plants grew even more. And again, I had issues with evaporation and with hydration and with all of that fun stuff that a little oven type of an environment has. So what else can I do to it? Should I do like half of the pot of water and half LECA? That's something else already. In the end, all of these struggles, I do believe affected my orchids and did not allow them to grow to full potential, because not only is it enough to have a, let's say, adequate pH around the root system, or water with an adequate pH, better said, it's also important for that water to be present long enough for the roots to absorb whatever nutrients it might hold. Because once there's no more moisture, once the medium dries or the environment dries around the roots, no matter how much fertilizer you have there, it's not going to be picked up. It needs to be dissolved in water. Whatever fertilizer is left becomes salt. It doesn't get absorbed by the plant. These are my speculations, let's say. I'm not sure, but it kind of makes sense to me, right? So I ran into that problem, plus pH, plus the hassle, plus, I don't know, the LECA being dusty, plus this and the other. All of these little things together just kind of overwhelmed me, and I wasn't happy with the results that I was getting. Yes, I had flowers. We had orchids in bloom back then, right? You could see flowers. Did we have full potential? No. In the end, I decided that is just not worth doing the same things and expecting different results, right? So I decided to do something different, and that's when I potted my orchids in Sphagnum Moss. Here's the difference between LECA and Sphagnum Moss. First of all, Sphagnum Moss is slightly acidic naturally, so whatever water you put there, even if it's alkaline water, it's gonna get dragged down to the pH level of Sphagnum Moss. And Sphagnum Moss has a pH of, I think, between 5.5 and 6 or 6.5, depends on the brand, depends how fresh it is. If it's very old and breaking down, it can go very low, it can become very acidic. But good fresh Sphagnum Moss has a very adequate pH for plants and for orchids. So the pH situation was addressed. Also, the layering, as I like to call it, the wicking of the water situation, that has been addressed tenfold, because Sphagnum Moss is very wicking. It always kind of tends to even out. If you have a wet situation on the left, the right will start to pick up some of that moisture and even itself out. So I didn't have layering anymore, so all the roots were getting hydration and nutrients evenly at the same time, which is what I think matters. I think that's optimal. And also, I did not have issues with dehydration anymore, because Sphagnum Moss does retain a lot of water, and especially if you don't compress it, you make it loose like I do, it can retain a lot of water, like a lot of water. And that's pretty much it. I resolved these issues. Plus, it's not that dusty. I don't need to rinse it. I don't need to prepare it. I don't need to hassle with any of these things. It's easy to use. It's a dream. So all of those things combined, it's just better. It's just better for me. I think Sphagnum Moss generally is a lot more useful in warm climates, but I didn't imagine it was so useful. So that's why I switched, and I switched to like the top of the water retention medium possible. And I'm not using it in a combination of bark and moss and all. No, it's full Sphagnum Moss with a full opaque pot. No ventilation holes, nothing of the sorts. The bark up top, it's just there to prevent cyanobacteria. Other than that, no extra ventilation. The way that I pot the orchids is important because I don't compress them. I leave a lot of air pockets because what I want is to have humidity and moisture around the orchids, not like soaking water all the time. So yeah, that's how I pot the orchids, and that's how now I finally see more and more orchids doing things they weren't doing before for years. So I'm convinced that generally many of the things that were problematic with LECA were addressed. And I do believe the things that I told you about, they were the problem. I'm sure that some people have amazing results with LECA, and that's great. Because hey, you don't need to change it every 2 years, it doesn't break down, and you don't need to remove it from the roots, and that was always awesome about LECA, but it's simply not worth the results that I was getting. So yeah, that's why I gave up LECA. And the setup itself, I know I made it sound like it was the most horrible thing. It wasn't. It got horrible because it was requiring me to water so frequently, especially in semi-hydro before the self-watering setups. It was drying out so fast, it got really stressful, and seeing some orchids like the oncidiums shrivel like raisins after 2 days, oh brother, no, that's not something you want to see. So it was a little bit stressful, it wasn't that bad, and if you want to try it, absolutely, I think you should try. You should try these setups, because even if they don't work out, you're gonna have the experience and you're gonna understand your relationship with your environment better and how orchids react, how much water they consume in your environment, and so on. So each failure will teach you something, and that's something I always said on this channel, and I always showed you failures as well, and I talked about them. And I know, it's a negative thing and people don't like to hear about the negative aspect of things, but I do believe it's what teaches you the most. So go for it, try LECA, try other setups, it's fun. If it doesn't work out, it's not wasted time, it's experience gained, and that is incredibly valuable. So I hope this was useful, and I just hope it tickled your curiosity at least, because I know some of you were very curious about why I don't like LECA. That's why. I love Sphagnum Moss though. I think it's great. I'll show you why I think it's great. This is why I think it's great. Oh, she smells beautiful. You're gonna see her in other videos as well. This is the best bloom show from my tropical pointer cheetah that I have ever had. And I have such a great fragrance this year. Never did I ever have this fragrance, this powerful fragrance from this orchid, and I have her for multiple years. So let's end it here. I hope you've enjoyed today's video again, and thank you for asking about it. If you have other questions that you'd like me to address from the past, why did I stop doing, I don't know, something that I did in the past, let me know and I will address it. I do have reasons for everything that I do, and if I don't make them clear sometimes, I'm sorry, just let me know and I will address them. I'll tell you everything about it. Alrighty, so thank you so much for watching, hope you have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!